Hey guys, it's 30 degrees, so what better time to go for a night hike? Come along while I tell you some middle-of-nowhere horror stories. The only reason I'm telling this story is because I didn't run. If I had run, my eyes would have gone down to the path. I would have stopped watching the ground. I would have moved fast enough through brush and roots. I would have made noise, and I would have tripped. I didn't know any of that at the time. I only knew my shin was bleeding, the background noise had dropped off, and my own breathing suddenly sounded too loud. It was a midweek hike on a loop trail I'd done before. The last few weeks had been rough in a slow way, and I needed to be outside with nothing to deal with except distance. Late morning, I had a small pack with me with basic necessities: water, a snack, and a basic first aid kit. Near the trailhead, I passed a few people. After that, they became few and far between. Eventually, everything just faded. At about the 1 hour mark, I really needed to pee. I took out my earbuds and stepped off the trail where the brush was thick enough to hide me. Branches pushed back against me. The ground was damp. Leaves stuck to my boots. I didn't smell anything until I was several steps in. Then it hit, hard, close. A sharp chemical, strong enough that I tasted it. I breathed through my mouth and still felt it in the back of my throat. It didn't carry through the woods. It felt local, trapped in that pocket of brush. I looked down. Black tubing ran along the ground, pinned into the soil with U-shaped metal stakes. The stakes were evenly spaced. The tubing bent around small roots and disappeared under branches laid across it. I noticed the branch ends were cut. The wood was pale where it had been exposed. I crouched and followed the tubing with my eyes. A narrow route had been walked enough to flatten the plants along it. In a shallow dip under netting and sticks were rows of plants. I stopped breathing for a second, then I turned around. A thin line ran between two saplings at shin height. Fishing line, tight, hard to see until it caught the light. It wasn't in a random spot. It crossed the clearest gap back toward the trail, the place someone would choose while backing out. It sat at the height of your shin and would hit you if you moved quickly. I stood still and looked for where it went. It disappeared into brush on both sides. I didn't see anything hanging from it. I shifted to the left to look for a way around. The line pulled against my shin and something sharp caught. My leg jerked on its own. I looked down and saw a small hook tied into the line. Barbed, the kind that catches on fabric. It had snagged through my trouser leg and into skin. Blood came up quickly. It ran down into my sock, warm at first, then cool as it spread. My first impulse was to yank away. I didn't. I held my legs still and tried to slow my breathing. My hands didn't feel steady. They felt separate. I had to make my fingers work. I pulled the trouser fabric away. The hook sat shallow. The barb meant it would tear if I pulled hard. I pushed in slightly to clear the barb, rotated it, and eased it out. The pain arrived, sharp enough that my eyes watered. My throat tightened. I swallowed and tasted metal. As soon as the hook came free, two whoops came from deep in the trees. They were short notes, but close together. Definitely human. I stopped moving and I listened. There were no other voices, no footsteps. The only thing I could hear was my breathing and a drip somewhere. Then a reply came from farther away. The same two notes, but quieter and from a different direction. My mouth went dry. My tongue felt too large, I tried to swallow. Close by, on my left, something scuffed against dirt. It was one quick scrape, low to the ground, then stillness. I didn't look for a face. I backed out slowly. I kept my eyes down and placed my feet carefully. I found a gap beside the line and stepped through without touching it. Branches scraped against me as I pushed back toward the trail. I kept my hands close to my body so they wouldn't catch on anything. I didn't want to make noise. My boots hit the hard-packed dirt of the main trail. I kept walking. I didn't run. I didn't turn around. My breathing stayed high in my chest. I tried to push it lower, but I couldn't. Then the cut on my shin stung every time my sock shifted. The wetness made it worse. It kept dragging my attention down toward my legs and the ground. I forced my eyes forward anyway. The trail narrowed in places. In those spots, brush came close enough to scrape against me. I felt it on both of my arms. It kept pulling my attention sideways. Behind me, I heard a soft scrape. I instinctively stopped. The sound didn't repeat. I began to walk, but after a few steps, I heard it again. It was like someone was trying to be light on their feet, and then nothing. My neck felt tight. My jaw was clenched. A couple of minutes later, the trail dipped into a muddy patch where prints show clearly. I saw my earlier boot marks. Then I saw newer impressions. A second tread was showing up inside the edges of mine where the ground was softest. Overlap can happen on a narrow path. People aim for the same firm spots. This didn't look random. The overlap repeated too often. Step after step, the fresher weight had landed into the same track line. My hands went colder. My fingertips tingled. I stopped again. From behind me, around the bend, there was a small scuff on dirt. Then nothing. I started walking again, faster. My steps shortened. My shoulders stayed tight. I kept my head forward. I passed a section where the trail squeezed between two trunks. I smelled cigarette smoke for a brief moment. It was faint and then gone. The smell didn't linger. My stomach turned. I swallowed and felt the dryness. I decided to do a test and regretted it. I slowed down for a few seconds like I was checking my phone. I could no longer hear the noise that was behind me. And that was when I felt sheer panic. Was it because it stopped only when I stopped? I put my phone away and kept going. The cut on my shin kept rubbing. The sock would stick and pull. The pain came in steady rhythm with my steps. A straight stretch opened up, and I saw the trailhead sign through the trees. I kept walking at the same pace. I didn't change my rhythm again. As the car park got closer, the sounds behind me stayed on leaves and dirt. I didn't hear footsteps on gravel. I finally reached the exit and the car park. My car was finally within view. I hurried over to it, got in, and locked the doors. I looked down at my shin. Blood had soaked my sock, but the cut was small. It had kept pulling my attention down when I needed it up. I got out of there as fast as I could. When I got back home, I reported it to the forest rangers. I gave my name, gave the trail name, the rough area where it happened, but I don't know what came of it. But now when I go hiking, I don't go off trail unless I have to. I watch the ground, and I make sure to go pee before I start the hike. A man in camo told me to come with him. I went the other way. I'm telling this story because I didn't go with him. I didn't let him steer me off the trail. I didn't let him get close enough to touch my pack. I kept moving until there were other cars in view. It was a midweek hike on a loop trail near my town. Late afternoon, low cloud, damp air that stuck to my clothing. I wanted an hour of walking and then to be back in my car before it got dark. I parked at a small gravel lot with a faded signboard and a map behind cloudy plastic. I glanced at it out of habit. Nothing on it mentioned a closure. My phone signal flickered near the lot, dropped, and then came back on. It does that out there. I took a small pack with water, a snack, and a basic first aid kit. I put my phone on low power mode and started down the trail. Near the start, I passed a few people. After 15 minutes, the gaps between footsteps got longer, voices faded. The only sounds left were my boots, my jacket brushing, and occasional birds. I wore one earbud at low volume, the other ear stayed open. I walked until my breathing settled. The damp air made my nose run. I wiped it on my sleeve and kept going. A twig snapped ahead of me. It was a single snap, then silence. I kept walking and listening without changing my pace. A man stepped onto the trail about 20 feet ahead. He came out from the right side through brush I hadn't noticed moving. He was tall and broad through the shoulders. A camo jacket, dark trousers, a cap pulled low. His boots looked cleaner than mine. He didn't look surprised to see me. He raised one hand slightly, palm out. "Afternoon," he said. His voice was calm, normal volume, no heavy breathing. I stopped a few steps short of him, my feet planted. My hands tightened on my pack straps. "Hi," I said. His eyes dropped to my hands quick, then back to my face. "You're on private land," he said. "Trail shouldn't be open back here." I looked past him. The path continued, curving out of sight. There wasn't a fence, no tape, no signs. "I've walked this loop before," I said. He gave a small nod that didn't answer me. "Work crews in," he said. "We've had theft from the site. They told us to stop anyone we don't recognize and log details." He shifted half a step to his left as he spoke. His body moved toward the center of the trail. The gap to pass him narrowed. The left side dropped slightly into wet brush. The right side was thicker. "I need you to walk back to the entrance," he said. "Take your name and car reg, then you can go." His tone stayed even. My mouth went dry. I swallowed and heard it. "I'm heading back to the car park," I said. I turned my shoulders slightly, as if I might step around him. His head tracked the movement. "You can't go that way," he said. No raised tone, no visible anger. He sounded certain. "I came from that way," I said. I kept my voice flat. I kept my hands where he could see them. He shook his head once. "There's work going on," he said. "This is the safest way." He tilted his chin toward the brush on the right, the side he'd stepped out of. There wasn't a path there. There was a narrow gap between branches, wet leaves on the ground, dark soil. It would be easy to lose sight of the main trail after a few steps. I didn't move. He watched my face. His eyes kept dropping to my hands and back up again. "Phone got signal here?" he asked. It sounded casual. "It drops," I replied. He held the pause. My breathing sounded too loud in my ears. He shifted his weight. Wet leaves made a soft sound under his boot. Then he whistled. Short, one note, loud enough to carry. My skin tightened along my forearms. I stayed still and listened. A few seconds later, a second whistle answered from somewhere off the trail. Same note, quieter, but it stayed out of sight. The man didn't look toward it, he looked at me. "See," he said, "we're out here. I'll get you sorted." My tongue felt thick, my mouth stayed dry. I took one small step backward without lifting my heel much. His eyes went to my feet. "Stop," he said. I stopped. The distance between us stayed the same. The space behind me felt smaller than it had a minute ago. "I'm trying to help you," he said. "This isn't a problem if you do what I'm saying." His attention went to my hands again. I moved my right hand slowly toward my pocket where my phone was. I kept it visible while I did it. "I'm calling someone," I said. His eyes followed my hand. "No need," he replied. I took the phone out anyway. The screen lit up. One bar of signal flickered and dropped, then came back. My fingers felt stiff. I opened the camera. I raised the phone slightly and angled it so it would catch him and the trail behind him. His expression changed. The small smile went away. "Put that away," he said. I didn't answer. I didn't lower it. My arms started to shake. I held the phone with both hands to steady it. He stepped forward. It was a normal step. It brought him closer by a few feet. I stepped back at the same time. My heel caught a wet root. My foot slid. My ankle rolled, and a sharp sting hit the outside edge. I caught myself before I fell. The pain stayed. Running would have put me on the ground. He saw it. His eyes went to my feet, then back to my hands. "You're going to hurt yourself," he said. "Come on." He shifted slightly left again, taking up more of the trail. The space to pass him got tighter. I took another step backward, slow, testing my ankle. It held, but that sting stayed sharp. I kept my eyes on his upper body. I watched his hands. His jacket pockets looked full. I raised the phone higher. "I'm recording," I said. My breath pushed out too fast at the end. He stared at the phone for a second, then he looked past me, down the trail behind me. He whistled again. That same short note. The reply came faster this time, closer than the first, but still out of sight. It came from the brush, not the trail. My stomach tightened. The air felt cold on my teeth. I backed up again. My ankle complained. I adjusted my weight to keep it stable. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to lose him from my view. He matched me without rushing. One step when I took one. He kept the distance. He kept the trail. "You're making it worse," he said. "I'm leaving," I told him. He didn't argue. He just watched my hands. From the left side of the trail, outside of my line of sight, leaves compressed softly. Then nothing. I didn't look toward it. My left shoulder tightened. I took another step back. The trail behind me straightened for a few yards. I could see the curve after that. I couldn't see the car park, however. The man stopped. I stopped too. My breath was loud. My phone shook. We held still. Then I heard another small sound from the side. A weight shift. Leaves pressing down. The man started to walk toward me again. I didn't wait for him to close the distance. I turned and walked fast. I didn't sprint. My ankle hurt, and sprinting would have put me on the ground. I kept my steps short so my ankle would hold. I kept my phone in hand. Behind me, I heard a single footstep on the dirt, then another. It sounded light and controlled. I didn't turn around. I tried to call someone. The call screen opened, but the signal dropped to nothing. The call failed. I put the phone away so I wouldn't keep looking down. I listened. The footsteps behind me came and went. 2 light contacts, silence, then another. I slowed slightly to get through a slick patch of mud. Whatever I'd been half hearing behind me didn't continue. That was when my stomach dropped, because the pause matched mine. I forced myself to keep walking fast. The trail narrowed, branches brushed my sleeves. My breathing stayed high. My mouth was still dry. I swallowed, but I could hear it each time. Ahead, the trees thin, the light changed. I saw pale gravel through the trunks. The sounds behind me stayed in the leaves. I didn't hear them hit gravel. The car park came into view. Cars were there, mostly at the far side. A closed door. Someone laughed. A dog barked once. I walked into the lot and went straight to my car. I didn't scan the trees. I didn't stand still. The key shook in my hand. I had to try twice. I got in and locked the doors. My chest was rising too fast. I stared through the windshield until my breathing slowed enough to start the engine. Before I pulled out, I looked at the driver's side front tire. The valve cap was missing. I stared at it for a second, then checked the other tire. The cap was still there. I didn't see anyone near my car. I didn't see the man in the lot. I drove out without waiting. I didn't stop until I hit a main road with other cars around me. My grip on the steering wheel hurt my hands. I didn't notice I was squeezing that hard until my fingers cramped. I reported it later, but I didn't use my name. I don't walk that loop trail now. I don't let strangers control where I stand. And I certainly don't let anyone get between me and the way back. "Great Toyota," he said, like he was helping me. We were still on the footpath when he said it. I hadn't told him what I drove. I kept walking and didn't answer. This happened early evening on a riverside footpath just outside of town. I'd parked in a small lay-by off the B road and gone through the gate for a short walk before dark. I'd finished work late and went out to clear my head. I chose an out-and-back route I'd used before. There was mist low by the river, and the ground was damp. As I went through the gate, I noticed red and white tape around the hinge side. It looked recently put up. I didn't know why it was there at the time. The path was narrow and level at first. Low branches snagged on my clothes. You could hear the river through the trees. A few minutes in, I saw the tape again, tied to a branch at shoulder height, and then another strip farther ahead. I slowed down to look at it. I thought I heard something behind me, but I didn't turn. I waited a second and then kept walking. The sound started again. It was light steps on dirt. A man came alongside me without asking. "Sorry, didn't mean to come up silent," he said. He was in his 40s maybe, hoodie under a thin jacket, hat pulled low, no backpack. His hands stayed in his pockets. I nodded and kept my eyes on the path. He said he'd been telling people about the tape and that he tied it where the trail got bad. He pointed ahead with his chin. I didn't reply. He asked if I'd come from the lay-by. I said yes. He nodded once, like he was confirming it. He asked what I was driving, but he asked it like it was nothing. I then looked at him properly. His face was relaxed. His eyes seemed to be scanning me. I said I was just walking. He smiled briefly and said he was making conversation. He said people got turned around and he ended up guiding them back. As we came up to a bend, he moved half a step ahead of me. The path got smaller where the roots crossed the dirt, and the drop to the river was steeper. He took the line I would have taken. I remained behind him rather than squeeze past. He said it was slippery in the wet. He kept talking. He asked where I'd started from, whether I'd been on this trail before, whether I was meeting anyone, whether anyone knew I was out here, and how far of a walk I was going to take. I gave short answers whenever I answered. The tape showed up again on a low branch, then on a trunk. It wasn't marking a hazard. It looked like it was pointing. Ahead, a fallen tree lay across the path, and 2 roots had been worn around it. One stayed low by the river on slick ground. The other climbed a few meters into thicker trees. The man stepped onto the higher line without pausing. He said that way was better, and that the riverside was washed out. I stopped at the split. The lower route looked wet, but it looked like the trail. The higher line looked like a detour that could turn into nothing once the trees closed in. I said I was staying low. He turned back and looked at me as if I'd missed something obvious. He said it came back together and I could drop down after the bend. I didn't move toward him. He realized my hands had tightened. He asked again if I was out here by myself, but he asked it quieter. I didn't answer him. Then I heard a woman's voice from the trees up the slope to the right. It said, "Help, please help." It stopped and then came again. "Help, please help." The words were even. The volume didn't change. It sounded like it was coming from one fixed spot. I listened for other sounds. Footsteps, leaves crunching, branches snapping. I didn't hear any. The man looked at me as if we were meant to do something together. He said we needed to go up, and that if someone was hurt, they couldn't get down to the river path. He didn't move until I did. He took a step toward the higher line and paused, waiting for me to follow. I didn't. I took my phone out and held it low near my thigh. The signal indicator flashed, then disappeared. He told me to call it in straight away. He hadn't seen my screen. He'd seen my hand move. I said I couldn't. He frowned. He said I could and that I didn't want to. He stepped down toward me. I stepped back without looking behind me. My heel found a root. I slid. I grabbed the nearest trunk to steady myself. I saw that there was tape tied around that trunk too. It was new. I noticed it because my hand was right on it. The bark scraped my skin. The pain hit immediately. The man's eyes went to my hand. "You're bleeding," he said. I looked down. There was blood on my palm. It wasn't much, but it made my grip feel slick. The woman's voice came again from the same place. "Help, please help." The man tilted his head as if listening, and then looked at me. He asked if I really wanted to walk away from that. I shifted my weight toward the lower route by the river. He moved at the same time, not in front of me, but close enough that he could have reached across. He still didn't touch me. His hands stayed in his pockets. I said I was going back. He said okay, and that he was coming too because I wasn't safe by myself. I started down the lower route. The river was closer here. The ground was slick. The trail narrowed to a strip of dirt between roots and the drop. I watched my footing because I didn't want to fall. The man stayed half a step behind me. I could hear him, light steps, close enough that it was clear where he was. The woman's voice stopped. We walked for a minute, with the only sound being the river and our footfall. Then behind us, there was a quick crackle, like tape rubbing against bark, followed by a soft flutter. I didn't turn. I kept walking. The man spoke as if nothing had happened. He asked what car I was driving. The question came back too quickly. It didn't feel like small talk, but I didn't answer. The trees thinned slightly ahead. The light got brighter. The lay-by wasn't visible yet, but it felt close. My scraped palms stung when my fingers flexed. Blood had smeared and dried tacky. My hand kept wanting to curl, but I kept it open. The man stayed behind me until the trail widened. Then he moved alongside me again. He said he needed the make and model in case something happened, and he had to describe it. I again didn't answer. He looked past me toward the lay-by, then back to my face. That was when he said it. Gray Toyota. My car was a gray Toyota. I hadn't told him that. The last stretch opened onto the lay-by. 2 cars were parked at the far end. A man was leaning into the back of his car. The man walking with me slowed as we reached that open space. He didn't follow me toward my car. He stopped near the gate and stayed there with his hands in his pockets, watching. I beelined for my car, got in, and locked the doors. My scraped palm left a faint smear on the steering wheel. I wiped it on my jeans and started the engine. Before I pulled out, I checked the mirrors. A strip of red and white tape was tied around the base of the passenger side mirror. The knot was tight. It sat low, like it had been placed to be noticed once you were already in the seat. It hadn't been there when I parked. I didn't get out to remove it. I drove out. I didn't take the quiet roads home. I stayed on the main roads. I drove to a petrol station with lights and people and parked where I could see the entrance. Under the canopy light, I rinsed my palm and wrapped it with tissue and tape from my first aid kit. Then I called it in while I had signal. I gave the lay-by and the footpath name. I described the man and the tape and the voice in the trees. I haven't been back to that path since. I feel like I need to warn other hikers about this man.